No. No buzz. I just Bees book club. No physical copy again today because I once again listened, this time actually for the first time, to book two of the Indian Lake trilogy by Stephen Graham Jones, Don't Fear the Reaper. A book that I came off of initially on like as I finished listening to it thinking that I was like pretty mixed on it, and then I gave it a day or two, and I think it might be better than the first book. Partially because it reinforces a lot of what was going on. Partially because having sort of been over the last year through another trilogy that I really loved the first book of, but like didn't love the second book, and found the third book very very good in its own right, but not exactly what I was hoping for. The Rebecca Roanhorse trilogy that ends with Mirrored Heavens, that I think is a phenomenal fantasy novel, but or fantasy trilogy, but like didn't sort of like burst my chest out, burst my heart out of my chest in the way that like Black Sun made me hope it might. Nothing I will continue to think about for a while. In the way that the second book in that trilogy felt ultimately like sort of a chessboard moving around. Don't Fear the Reaper doesn't feel like a chessboard. It feels like it feels like it is it is underlining the themes of My Heart as a Chainsaw while trying new things in the same space, which is, I think, what I really want out of a trilogy. And it's also developing the characters because that's important, I guess, to people. Um, my first like really minor note. This is just from listening to the audiobook. I thought Letha's voice actress was really good, and I kind of tried to dig around and find out exactly who it was. But they just kind of give you a big list of people who did the voice acting um, on the Simon Schuster website, on the Devil's website, um, Libra FM's website, all the places that I like found any credits at all. I'm sure there's some sort of like voice actors database or something like that where it's probably accessible, but I just couldn't find it because the internet is useless, right? B. Um, but yeah, I thought the voice actor who did Letha's chapters, who did Letha's POV chapters, was like really really good, and I think the whole cast did a pretty fantastic job. I think everyone was able to in an ensemble cast like this, where there's what I think probably at least a dozen different point of view chapters, each of whom has a different actor. Um, Everyone was able not just to sort of give their own sort of take on the role that they were sort of cast in, but also the sort of major players who repeated often had to like say dialogue from a different person, and there was like a continuity there, which was I thought the audiobook was like extremely well cast in that way. um and that's as much as I have thoughts about audiobooks. um I think I'm glancing over to my notebook, my extremely legible notebook that is even more readable in real life than it is on a camera. That's, I guess, actually technically true. Um, I, yeah, my sort of second note that isn't about the ending, because I'll hold that to the end because that was my sort of first note, but um, there's like the big sort of structural change, right? From My Heart as a Chainsaw, which is entirely a Jade POV novel with also the cutaways of her essays, um, is that this book is told from the point of view of, like I said, like a dozen characters. Sheriff Hardy is a point of view character. Jade obviously is a point of view character. Letha is a point of view character, as I said. There are so many more. There's another set of essays being written They are not essays from Jade, because Jade has been in prison for 5 years or whatever. And the actual sort of text of the novel takes place over the course of basically one day, one extremely, one storm of the century kind of snowstorm in Prufrock, as this serial killer who's been operating for a number of years across state lines breaks out of his prison caravan on his big reunion tour, and lands in Prufrock, Dark Mills South. A, a genuinely cool character who sort of embodies a lot of what I think was great about the way that Stephen Graham Jones manages to mix the 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 realist slasher villain with um, the reality of Native heritage and its interpretation within the U.S. Post genocide, during genocide, I guess, and also the straight up sort of counterfactual or mystical elements that are also genre elements. And I have more to say about that in a second, but Dark Mill South, I think, is a fantastic character throughout this book in multiple ways of saying the word character. But yes, there's a noted serial killer on the loose, has broken out of a police caravan. It's a storm of the century snowstorm. Jade is back in town also for the first time since the events of My Heart is a Chainsaw, and slasher ensues. Very basic premise is that, plus Jade's back, but she's not Jade anymore. She has forsaken slasher. She goes by Jennifer again, and she sort of reintroduces herself to the town. We get our Drew Barrymore in Scream style initial kill that leads into other stuff, including the non-Jade slasher 101s, but they're not called that. They're no longer written to Holmes, the professor who passed in the middle of My Heart of the Chainsaw, in a way that I think got sort of codified as being true at the end of that book. Or maybe it's in this one that his actual death was because Theo Mondragon was firing, his nail gun into the sky and punctured the wings. I don't know. I have this sense that is now the canonical explanation, even though it was a sort of flight of fancy on Jade's part in the first book. But I couldn't pinpoint exactly where I have that idea from. So, maybe it'll show up in The Angel of Indian Lake, a book I still haven't read, and I have specifically been avoiding reading and or listening to, because I wanted to talk to myself about this book first, because one of the big things I did come away with after that day of sort of reflection, after being I don't know about the ending of this book, and then coming back to it and being this book is actually maybe better than the first one, is in both of those moments I was I do want to know what happens in book 3. Initially because I was I think maybe Stephen Graham Jones kind of fumbled the bag here a little bit. It didn't quite work out. It got a little convoluted toward the end. There's too many pieces. There's too many gears all interlocking in a way that I don't, and maybe that was just me listening versus reading. I have much lower comprehension audibly than I do, in my long experience of visually reading things. But also, when I came out the other end, and I was I'm pretty sure I actually understand that what all happened quite well, and I think it actually worked really well. I do still think that I'm really excited about where book 3 goes, because I think there's still an option open where it goes in a direction that I just hate, or that deeply undermines what I feel this trilogy has been about, not sort of in terms of intended messages or themes or anything, but just how it fits within the structure of the horror genre as I understand it, and how it sort of both progresses and undermines that genre. I think this the third book could go in any direction, and it came out recently, and I have plenty of access to it, so I'm very excited to get to it. And this is why I finally read book two, is because book three is out, and I was like, I kind of want to go from the jump because I kind of missed the boat on book two to begin with, and I may have lost my exact point. But yeah, to sort of come back to that note that I was sort of talking about, the shifting POV is interesting. Being sort of deeply engaged with King as I have been for a little while now, like I think there's a part of me, I think especially initially, where I was like a little disappointed that Stephen Graham Jones doesn't quite pull like a Salem's Lot. There is no the lot, portions of Don't Fear the Reaper. There are no, like, he pulls this in The Stand again or whatever, but like, Salem's Lot is the one for me that is the thing, which is like the sequence where King pulls all the way back and just tells the little tiny, maybe 2 sentence, maybe paragraph stories of things that are happening in the lot, in Salem's Lot, in Jerusalem's Lot, of or it'll be like a few pages that's just like, each paragraph sort of begins with like, the alarm clock rings and this person goes off to work, the alarm clock rings and whatever. But the sort of like panoramic view of the town sort of never happens in this book, and that to me is like this quintessential King move when you're talking about sort of multiple POV novels of his, and that never quite happens in Don't Fear the Reaper. And there was a part of me that was like, if he had added that touch, I think there's bits of that where this book where that would work really, really well. I'm thinking of like, a very short chapter even that is just like all of the kids in the video store, sort of getting a sentence or two. And that's not really how Stephen Graham Jones writes. It's not, I think, the influence he takes from King, but it was, knowing that he is deeply influenced by King, and knowing what I like in King, I maybe was like, oh, that could have been a really nice touch. But it turns out it also doesn't matter, because I don't want this to be a more Kingy book in really any way, including that one, necessarily. I don't know. Maybe that pushes out and it becomes better. Maybe not. Writing's hard. But it was sort of nice to think through that lens as a sort of anchor to immediately mix a metaphor within 4 words of itself, but that to have that lens of reading this book through King and an avowed influence on Stephen Graham Jones, and also to then anchor my own understanding of the book as its own thing because I read it through that lens, which is to say, I looked and I saw the anchor was there. That's the metaphor, right, B? Yeah. Well, I had another. Yeah. So I sort of said that at the beginning of the book, the beginning of the book is great. Most of the book is great. The POV chapters, I think multiple chapters we get from, I guess oh no, it's well, the extremely silly that I didn't just realize this until just now. Part of the work of the what is in My Heart is a Chainsaw, the Slasher 101 essays that Jade is writing to Mr. He's called Mr. Sherlock, he's called Mr. Holmes, he's called Mr. something else, that like Granger or something like that. No, Well, now all the names are mixed up in my head. Anyway, that are followed up in this is the essays that are being presented from a high school student to a teacher are very much the Carrie move, right? Is the epistolary move that bulks out Carrie into a real novel, and that also makes it one of his best. So that's, the king. The king is there. The king is there. The Stephen King is in there in that way. It literally just occurred to me. Very silly. Um, I said, the end of the book, I kind of came away from being like, and then a day later, I was like, oh yeah, um, and like to be maybe more explicit about that, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The thing I wrote doesn't really matter. There's a lot of twists and turns between a couple of twins in the book that um, are compounded by another person involved, and I was getting the three of them mixed up because they're all from the first book, and I didn't exactly remember their interactions with each other, even though they're brought up a number of times, and it's partially because I just don't process audio as well as I process reading. I've already said all this shit. Anyway, um, okay, give me 1 second. Now I'm going to end this the same way I ended the last one, which is to say I wrote a note down that is not a complete note, and instead of sort of thinking through it and elaborating on it, I'm just going to read the note. To maybe elaborate on what I said in My Heart is a Chainsaw No Buzz, what feels genuinely new in the trilogy to me is the way it takes the postmodern turn fully and completely seriously without fucking it up, while breaking that turn's inherent need to rely on realism, even if it is SF no realism or science fictional realism, with things like the Lake Witch and the White Elk. That White Elk, though. Dark Mill South, man. Don't fear the Reaper's. Don't fear the Reaper's cool. Don't let them lie to you. Don't fear the Reaper is really good. And thanks for not watching.